Time to talk to our new TYT national correspondent, Matt Sheffield. We've talked to him once before, but he broke a giant story just today on Adam Hageman. So, Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Good to be here.
All right. So tell us, who in the world is Adam Hageman?
Well, so Adam Hageman is a guy who was a political appointee in the former Trump administration. He worked in the Commerce Department, and basically he had a connection there that got him a special political appointee job, plum cash, rich job. And this guy had a career in Republican politics. He worked for Turning Point USA, which is this right-wing Christian nationalist group that targets young people to try to brainwash them with Republican propaganda. And it turns out, so after he worked for Turning Point USA as an youth event coordinator, he then went to go and work for Trump at the Commerce Department doing events also. And while he was working for Trump, he got arrested in November of 2020 after he was found to be a member of a secret group of pedophiles on the internet. And they were exchanging child abuse videos. And this guy, Adam Hageman, he shared them, a video himself, according to his own guilty plea. And he said that he enjoyed, gave them, they were all trading their gross, sick fantasies. And he was saying he liked kids between 12 and 16 years old. And he even asked them to try to go and find a father that would rent his child to them so that they could abuse this child. So, this classic groomer, sick, demented behavior. And eventually, so he was working in Arizona when he started doing this, and the investigation started there. And apparently, they identified that he was working for the Commerce Department, and then they arrested him, and he's been in jail since November of 2020, and finally did his guilty plea and his sentence, and that broke. TYT is the first news site to break that story, so we broke that yesterday, last evening.
Yeah, so everybody's talking about this story now, and because it's an amazing story of hypocrisy from the right wing. So this guy was the youth events coordinator?
Yeah, when he was working for Turning Point USA, that's what he was doing. His job was literally to be around the age group that he was looking to molest. This guy, the police even, so they had this whole litany of things that he was talking about, his really gross fantasies. And he was even talking about how he wished he could molest his younger brother, but he was too old for him. And if only he was younger, then he could do it. So, but yeah, and he had access to all kinds of top level Republicans. So there's pictures on the internet that we found of him with this right-wing radio host named Sebastian Gorka, who used to be a high-level senior White House official in the Trump administration. Then he had another picture that he posted on Instagram with Madison Cawthorn. That's the nut job North Carolina congressman who just got defeated in a Republican primary out there. He was too crazy for the Republicans. They finally found someone who was too crazy and weird for them.
Yeah.
But they didn't get rid of this guy. The police got rid of him.
Yeah. And Cawthorn, of course, only lost because he criticized other Republicans. So that's another story. But now for Hageman, this is not in dispute because not only was he arrested, he got 5.5 years in prison. So is he in prison now? Is it completely concluded? And just to be clear, is it just for the child porn that he got the 5.5 year sentence? He talks about all these kids that he wants to molest, but did they get him on the actual molestation?
Well, he did claim in the group, according to the prosecutors, he did claim to have sexually abused a child who was 15 years old. But it looks like they weren't able to identify, or they didn't charge him on it, on that allegation. And so basically they got him to plead guilty to possession of and receipt, to receipt of child pornography. And it looks like this group that he was in, though, he may be providing information to them. So the mandatory minimum for possession of child porn is 5 years, and so he got 5.5. So just above the mandatory minimum, which does suggest that he might be informing on some of these other people in the group. And we do know that there is another Republican congressional aide, former Republican congressional aide, and his name is Ruben, and he's got a weird name that I don't know how to pronounce for sure, but it's like Ruben Verastegui. And this guy, he worked at the RNC, he worked at the Senate Republicans for a couple of different committees for them, and he was into baby rape porn. And he just got sentenced after a guilty plea to 12 years in prison. So, and they both were living in Arizona at the time, and the Homeland Security Department agent that was investigating Verastegui was also investigating Adam Hageman, and the investigation began at the same time. So the feds aren't saying it, but all the evidence is pointing to that these guys were part of the same group, and that there were 16 other individuals who were part of the group who we don't know of yet, and what the cases are against them. So it's going to be very interesting as we move on to see what happens to these other people.
Now, there's an interesting update about Turning Points USA that was not in the story that we're going to get to in a second. But before we get there, you've got this guy turning in a group of people who are pedophiles and want to be pedophiles that are trading child porn, and even one that involves babies. So I assume that the right wing is livid, and they finally found the pedophiles they were looking for. So QAnon has spoken out against them, and Charlie Kirk, and all those right wingers who say they care a lot about it. They all have given public comments denouncing him. Is that correct?
That is incorrect. They haven't said anything about Adam Hageman at all, and that says more than anything they could possibly say in this regard, because basically what happened is that as these fundamentalist religious zealots lost public opinion on same-sex marriage, and they lost public opinion on LGBT rights, they basically have resorted to just making stuff up to terrify people. And the Republican Party basically has started to, as you said, they're literally just copying stuff from QAnon, and that's their political platform. You have to vote for us because the Democrats are going to let the pedophiles get your children. Well, it turns out that it's the Republicans who are the ones who have been employing the pedophiles. And it's basically a deflection ploy, because they don't want people to know what they're actually up to, and the people who they are choosing to associate and promote, and to give out there and get senior level access. I mean, your average Republican doesn't get to go and post photos at the White House like Ruben Verastegui did. They're not getting up there to have smiley pictures with Charlie Kirk or Sebastian Gorka. These are people with real access and walking in the highest corridors of power, and they're all Republicans as far as we can see so far. And you've got Denny Hastert, the former Speaker of the House, who was molesting boys for decades, and they don't want to talk about that stuff for very good reason.
Yep. And so look, as a progressive, I can say whenever a Democrat does something wrong, we call it out just as much as a Republican, right? So Nancy Pelosi, as husband, is doing insider trading, in my opinion, like crazy. We don't want that. We don't want any insider trading with information. So we don't like it when Richard Burr, a Republican, does it. We don't like it when Democrats do it. We call out Anthony Weiner, you name it. There's no reason that we would ever protect people who are actually guilty on our side, right? But the only reason you would is if you don't actually care about the issue. You just want to play politics and mislead people. And like you said, the sound of silence on the right wing about this case is deafening. So it's obvious that they don't actually care about the kids, in my opinion. They care about covering their political asses. But as things have turned, it's Turning Point USA might have to be a little bit more careful going forward because the update you have. What is that?
Yeah, so after we published the story, when did some more digging on the story, and it turns out that Turning Point USA this past June actually announced that they are getting into the business of operating schools. So they literally, in Arizona, just announced that they're going to be launching a K through 12 private school called Turning Point Academy, and they're trying to get children to show up and be on it and apply for it. And this, so it's K through 12, which is literally the age group that this guy had, that their former employee Adam Hageman had said he was interested in. So that's where we are with this. That they, right after their guy is arrested and for being a pedophile, they decide they're going to open a school. So this is something as a matter of community safety. If QAnon and the right wing were actually concerned about this, you've got an organization that employed pedophile opening up a school. Seems like that organization shouldn't be allowed to do that if they were sincere in their beliefs. But of course, they're not.
Yes.
But we will make sure that the people of Arizona, we're gonna follow that story up and ask people, how do they feel about that?
Yeah, well, so that's super relevant because look, I don't know that Charlie Kirk knew that Hageman was a pedophile. I'll even give him the benefit of the doubt and assume he didn't. I mean, I don't know that they're that monstrous, right? I don't know that that it just and then we talked about it on the main show on Friday too, that just because you take a picture with a rando doesn't mean that that rando is a pedophile. So it's not necessarily on Gorka, Cawthorn, et cetera. So we're being super fair about it. But at the same time, if you employed in that state, in Arizona, Hageman's from Arizona, a groomer, I mean, a very literal groomer, a guy who looks for young kids to groom so that he can molest them. And he actively has talked about it and is convicted for it and is imprisoned for it. And then you say, okay, in that same state, I'm gonna start K to 12, which would have been his dream, right? Isn't it fair of us to ask what precautions is Turning Point USA going to take so that they are not infiltrated by groomers and pedophiles again as they set up an institution for young kids, right?
Yeah, that's a completely fair question to ask because what the procedures that they had in place that allowed them to hire Adam Hageman, this guy, who was a pedophile, what they need to be asked. What have you done to change things? How do we know that the procedures that led to you hiring Adam Hageman are not going to lead you to hire someone else who has the exact same, proclivities and sickening behavior? We don't know that, and they've got to demonstrate that they have changed if they want the public to trust them with their children. Because this guy, he's been in jail since he was arrested in 2020, and they kept him in jail because they regarded him as a danger to the community. And he was in Arizona, like that's where he got started, and that's where the headquarters of Turning Point USA. So it's a serious issue, and as of yet, Turning Point USA has demonstrated they've proved nothing about how they've changed their protocols and whether they're doing sufficient background checks or things like that. So all good questions to ask for sure.
Absolutely. All right, so Matt's gonna stay on this story. Matt Sheffield breaking a big story everybody's talking about in Washington today. So Matt, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
And of course, everybody can get Matt's stories and Candace's stories at tyt.com. So check it out, and we'll have the link down below so you guys can read it on your own. All right, see you soon. Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.